Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
Sound Cartel.
Despite all the uncertainty COVID's given us, one thing is for certain. It's helped us change the way we see things in a whole different light. From Sound Cartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Acclaimed business coach, author and keynote speaker John Di Natale sees three different factors that have emerged from the crisis: the way we show up, the way we work, and the way we change. Next Tuesday, on the 8th of March, John will join two other panellists on this topic in a one-off live online discussion called COVID Merry-Go-Round, Searching for the Business Wins. Brought to you by this podcast, Business Essentials Daily, and Barrington Centre, the free webinar will feature John alongside Dr. Kelaher, Principal Medical Advisor to the Federal Department of Health, and Rhonda Andrews, leading corporate psychologist and Managing Director of Barrington Centre. Plus, economist Professor Neville Norman of Melbourne University will address the state of the economy and the implications for business. In that session, John Di Natale will expand on his thoughts around the brave new business normal we find ourselves in. John supported businesses through a number of crises, including the dot-com boom and bust, the economic upheavals from September 11, and more recently, the GFC. Chris Ashmore asks John whether COVID has had a much greater impact on our lives.
I think it has. I think COVID, in terms of the duration and the depth of the crisis that we've endured, I think that's been very different. In particular, I think people have had a chance to reevaluate and reprioritise their life. So, coming out of COVID, we have concepts like the Great Resignation, with Microsoft in the US predicting that 40% of the global workforce plans to leave their employers in the next 12 months, So those sorts of changes I don't think we've seen before as a result of, the sorts of crises that you mentioned.
And how do people tend to cope with crisis, do you think?
Well, they say tough times create tough people, and that may well be true, but I think the other thing that comes through in a crisis is that the best in people comes out. Challenging times give rise to a whole lot of things. We tend to think more deeply in challenging times. We tend to have changes in our perspective. We make an adjustment in our values and what's important to us, and we change our priorities, not just for the time during the crisis, but in ways that will carry us well beyond the crisis. And I think whether we realise it or not, we have that opportunity to change all the time, but sometimes it takes a crisis to spark our thinking in such a way that we really make those changes. We get spurred into action and we make the changes in our professional lives and our personal lives in the way that we have over this last couple of years.
Has COVID taught us anything about ourselves, and what should we be thinking about now?
There have been some really important lessons that have come from COVID, both in a business sense and I think also for many people on a personal level. Authenticity has come through very strongly, I think. I think there's been a much higher level of acceptance of the difficulty people have in balancing their work and their life and their social life and their love life and all the relationships that they're trying to balance. And I think out of COVID has come an understanding that it's okay not to be okay, that you don't have to be positive all the time or motivated all the time. And there's no need to put on a brave face when you're feeling sort of anxious or sad or pressured, because being real is better than faking it effectively. And I think we were reminded during this time that it's fine to be okay and it's actually healthy and good for you to be more authentic than we've been in the past. The other thing that's come through is that we've gone back to caring more. So I think we've been pushed back to fundamentals, and when we're under pressure we tend to go back to those things that we care about most. And so caring more for ourselves and caring more for the people around us has been a big one. And I think the other is that a sense of trying to regain some sort of balance in life has been a big aspect. When your freedom to do simple things is taken away, like going for a relaxing walk in the sunshine or, meeting your friends or what have you, you tend to reevaluate. That sort of makes it really apparent how important those things are to you. So I think there's been a reprioritisation that's going to last long after this crisis is forgotten.
And when it comes to business, John, how should we think about how we do business now and our work?
Well, I think it's changed substantially as a result of all this. I mean, obviously, working remotely has become the norm. I remember having many discussions with my clients, in the pre-COVID era about remote working arrangements and decentralisation. And one client in particular, a CEO of a major organisation, was adamant that her team would not be able to work remotely and they wouldn't be as efficient or as effective. And as we speak, they've changed their entire structure. They've dropped office buildings. They've moved their team to remote, and they're more efficient and more profitable than they've ever been. So I think the remote aspect of work is here to stay. I think we've all seen how inefficient it is to drive to meetings and coffee catch-ups and all these discussions we were having pre-COVID that really didn't result in much benefit for the business. So I think we're much more conscious of how we're using our time and how we can do things more efficiently. And of course, the other is that we're having to embrace digital and online in terms of not just how we communicate and connect with people, but also how we deliver our services and how we engage with our clients.
COVID's brought with it a sense of trepidation, I suppose, and just a wait-and-see attitude. But is having a sense of urgency more important than it's ever been before?
Well, a sense of urgency has always been up there in terms of things that drive business or indeed our personal lives. I think the flexibility that these times demand of us is really the key. So I believe we really need to become like a gymnast in some respects. You have to be both flexible and agile, and flexible in the sense that you have to be able to bend and change without breaking in a business sense and a personal sense. And agility is more about the ability to move quickly. It's about making faster decisions, making changes more quickly. And of course, with that comes a risk that there'll be more errors and there'll be more failures, and that's inevitable and something we just have to embrace. And where you have the right controls in place around those things, then they tend not to be too serious or certainly not fatal. So, that flexibility and agility it's not just about having the most cutting-edge technology. It's about your ability to react and to adapt in response to changes that are happening all the time. And the changes don't seem to be slowing down. The world is continuing to adapt and evolve and change. And whilst COVID has accelerated that to a large degree, our ability to deal with that on an ongoing basis is really critical to surviving in business. And really, it's critical to living our best life as well.
Well, there's no doubt there's been a lot of change, both at work and our personal lives. But do you think, people being people, we will slowly go back to the way we used to do things before?
Well, they say old habits die hard, and they probably do. So there's a saying that the more things change, the more things stay the same. And I think an element of that will be true, but some fundamentals like caring about and listening to our customers, those things will never change. Dealing with our team and working with our team differently in ways that make a business thrive, that's not going to change. So I think some of the things will remain the same. However, there's been a massive shift, I think, in terms of the way people see work fitting into their life. And so the way that people not just balance life, so I tend not to think of it as a work-life balance, but more as a work-life integration. So I think there's a much higher level of consciousness in terms of how people are trying to integrate both their personal life and their work life in a way that will carry them forward. And I don't think that will go back to any sort of sense of normal. So there's, return to normal, there's the new normal. I think it's just an evolving normal on an ongoing basis.
That was John Di Natale, business coach, author and keynote speaker. Please join John and the stellar group of panellists at 7:30am on Tuesday, 8th of March for the live webinar. It's a free event and we'd love to see you there. You'll find all the details in the show notes of this episode. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at Sound Cartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast.
Sound Cartel.
This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.